Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's just gone past 11 and we have a lot to get through, so we're going to go straight into the briefing. Please note that your cameras and your microphones have been switched off as this webinar is being recorded. The chat function is enabled, and if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to use the chat function. Hopefully everyone should be able to hear me okay and see the slide on the screen. Any issues, please pop them into the chat now. Welcome to today's webinar on the 2026 DLR First Frame Short Film Scheme. The DLR First Frame Short Film Scheme aims to provide funding and support to emerging filmmakers looking to develop creative short films filmed in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown using locations in the county. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll begin. My name is Christina Reynolds, and I'm the Fiche Creative Manager here in IADT and your point of contact for applying to the DLR First Frame Scheme. I'm delighted to be joined here today by my colleagues noted on the slide up on the screen, who will all share different aspects about the scheme with you. First, we have Ciara King, Arts Officer from the DLR Arts Office, with whom I manage the scheme and who will speak to you about the scheme and the application. Ciara is joined by her colleague Emma Chambers, the Film Liaison Officer from the DLR Economic Development Office, who will speak to you about filming in the county. We are also joined by Vanessa Gilday, lecturer here in the Department of Film and Media at the National Film School in IADT, who will share some tips about script writing for the scheme. And finally, our special guest, writer and director and former DLR First Frames awardee, Hannah Mamalis, who will share some insights on her experience as an awardee of the scheme. Without further delay, please welcome Ciara King.
Hi, everybody. You're very welcome to our briefing this morning. Delighted to see so many people. Just to introduce First Frames, we have been running this for a number of years, and we work in partnership with the National Film School in IADT, who provides a lot of very invaluable support to the selected filmmakers as well. Really pleased to announce that we have 2 awards this year at €15,000 each, and they are funded by the Arts Office and the Economic Development Unit in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. So it's for emerging filmmakers, and we define emerging as emerging career stage. So it's not related to age, it's related to career stage. And we've had a really big variety of filmmakers over the last number of years supported by the scheme, and a lot of the shorts have gone on to do really well. Our closing date, you'll see it here, is Monday the 20th of July at 12 noon. We're going to work off the basis that everybody has read the brief and the questions and answers. Christina's put a lot of information up on the website, so please go to there and read through that for all the information. This morning, I'm really pleased to welcome Emma Chambers, who is DLR's film officer. And this is a relatively new position. Emma's been in place for about a year, but she's going to speak to you now about locations, because one of the key aspects of this this scheme is that the work needs to be filmed in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown. We've a wide variety of locations. It's not just the pier and the sea area. We've got a lot of suburban, we've got period houses, we've got forests, we've got rural. So there's really a lot of scope to explore the county. So I'd just like to introduce Emma now, and she is going to talk a little bit more specifically about our locations and some of the key information around permits and filming in the county.
Thank you, Ciara, and good morning, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here and be part of the First Frames this year. The film office was only established in 2025, so I would have came on board April, May last year. So this is really interesting. I'm delighted to be part of this. I probably won't really be engaging with people until after the process, as you'll be coming to me if you're successful, and I'm sure down the line and throughout your career, if you would like to film in Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. We have a really good website. You can see there on the screen, it's dlrcoco.ie/film. and it will just give you details of the application forms and process you need to apply when you want to film in DLR. We have some fantastic locations, as Kira was saying, not just around the seafront or the pier. We have some amazing parks, some lovely forests, and we have also our period houses, Cabinteely House and Marley Park House, which will be available with some restrictions, but they are available for filming. So if you'd like to go on there and have a look, you'll get a lot of information from there, and you'll see some of our fabulous locations. As I said, we've beautiful parks which are really, really good for filming. So just be aware if you do have a location in mind and it does involve the sea, it does require a lifeguard to be on duty, anything to do with the water. So just be aware that's an extra cost outside of the grant for people. So if you're doing any water-based activities, you have to get your own lifeguard who are certified for sea swimming, and that would be at the cost of yourself. I suppose when you are applying for filming, just a few key things that you need to note: that obviously you have to have an application form. Uh, at least 14 days notice, if not more, is really good, because if for whatever reason the location that you choose is a no, it's good that we give you a no early rather than later, so you can have a look at another location. Um, a risk assessment will be required and a map highlighting the area that you'd like to shoot, and they're the main things that we need when you are applying for filming. Um, and as I said, you can go and have a look at our website there, Film Office at DLR Coco. We have really a lot of information there, and all our locations are there for you to have a look at. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to fire them into the chat, or I can answer them later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Vanessa's going to come up next, but I just noticed there's some questions in the chat that we are replying to. So everyone should have a look there as well, because there might be questions that you have yourself. But I will, we'll just wait now for Vanessa to join us. Thank you, Vanessa.
Hi, thanks, Christina. Just adjusting my camera there, and welcome everyone. Yeah, I was just answering some questions in the chat. If there's some I don't get to, I'll get to them after I speak. So some of this, if you've been to film school or studied film or made a short film, some of this might be obvious, but we're aiming it at people maybe who are honing their script, just getting their script ready to apply. And these are a few kind of elements that you could look at your script without, the presence of somebody who's editing with you, which is a great thing to have. But just having a look at your script, having a look at your story, maybe you're still writing, maybe you're editing, maybe you're about to click send. Have a think about some of these things, and for some of you, you may know this already. So obviously in storytelling, in terms of this is a wonderful, and I have to say, huge thanks to Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County Council and the Film Office and the Arts Office for increasing the funding this year. So it's gone up to €15,000. That increase of €2,000 is enormous at this budget level. So all praise to Dún Laoghaire Rathdown for seeing that costs have gone up in the world, and you've gone out and found that extra funding. That extra 2,000 will make a huge difference. Bear in mind, producers out there, that it is inclusive of VAT, and I will see Kira nodding in a moment at me saying that. Okay, so storytelling at this budget level, keeping it simple. Now, keeping it simple, what we mean there is keeping, the kind of the overall production and storytelling simple, so that you can be as complex as you want in your cinematography, in your visual storytelling, in your soundscape, in your sound design, in all the imaginative and beautiful creative cinematic elements. But generally speaking, and we're open to non-traditional narrative films in this scheme as well, but generally all good stories, whether you're telling them to me in a pub or you're writing them in a script, have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we've a lovely image there. Every image you'll see, Christina has curated from previous winners, which is lovely. Very beautiful film there, The Invitation, by director Sinead O'Brien and writer Niamh O'Connor. And a lot of questions coming up about emerging there as well. So there's Sinead O'Brien. Anyone who knows Irish film well will know that she's directed tens of films, but all documentary. So this was her first live action short film. So there's an example of somebody who is, established in one genre, but was completely emerging in live action and scripted drama. So that's how they qualified. There is slight gray areas over the emerging, but I will come back and answer some of those questions in the chat. So if your question hasn't been answered yet, I will. So don't worry. So keeping it simple means one good idea, one spark, one theme, one key character, person. Avoiding cliche, avoiding what is derivative, avoiding what has been done before, avoiding cliched stories and setups, unless you are bringing something completely new and fresh to it, which of course, you may be making the new octogenarian zombie musical. Fair enough. So much has been done in the zombie genre, but if you're going to bring something fresh to it, we are open to it and we would love to read it. Workshop your ideas. What does this mean? All it means really, workshop is a fancy word for like talk to your peers about it, and talk to anyone who's a cinephile, talk to anyone who will listen about what your idea for your story, and see what kind of reactions you get, and then mold it from there. I would say 2 to 3 characters maximum. Now, rules are set to be broken, of course, but for you, for the budget, that's generally on this time frame, the duration of this scheme, in that 10 minute plus area, that 2 to 3 characters is plenty. However, your story, your film, you decide how many people are in it. You just have to convince us that it's doable and feasible within the budget. And readers will be looking at that as well. Minimize locations, but embrace the DLR area. So what we mean is, obviously look at the Dún Laoghaire Rathdown area, the district. It is enormous. It goes right up to Marley Park and beyond. And, there's untold forests and green areas. And, when people think of DLR, they think of the piers, but actually there's so much to the county that we love it when people surprise us with their location choices. And you can decide those later as well, but you can put them in the script too. The simplicity of concept allows for the complexity of creativity. Thank you, Christina. I will kind of fly through this because I don't want to take up too much time, and these slides will be available for you to read. So I suppose if you're looking at your story, and maybe if you're just still starting out and you have some idea, or you are rewriting and editing, who is the main character, the MC? Show us their normal life. And then what is it they want or need? Generally in filmmaking, you will hear this at the Hollywood scriptwriting conferences, you will hear it in Dún Laoghaire College of Further Education, and you'll hear it at the National Film School, and any writing classes you go to. What is it your character wants and needs? And do they get, how is their normal life interrupted? Do they get what they want or they need? And you'll know, most people will probably know this, if they get what they want or they need, and if they don't get either, then your film is a tragedy and has an unhappy ending. What is the drama? What is the catalyst that will force your character to act? What is the inciting incidents? What they've been drawn into? If we're looking at short film as that 3-act structure, beginning, middle, end. Who or what is stopping them get what they want? Most protagonists need an antagonist. So, is there somebody making it really difficult for them? Is there a series of attempts to get what they want? What is the main character willing to do to get what they want? And often show 3 attempts. Rules of threes. Threes work in film. They work visually in the frame, but they also work, and if you don't know what that means, look up rule of thirds. But threes work really, really great. Magic number. And do they get what they want in the end, or do they not? And where do you leave us? And what is it you want to leave us with? Thank you, Christina. Okay, some of these are kind of very obvious, but show, don't tell. I always use the example of an argument. If 2 people are arguing in cinematic terms, and you'll see this all throughout cinema history, and particularly into kind of the great films that came out of America and France in the 70s. But you will see, if two people are having an argument, we can see the argument and not hear it. But because of what comes before or after, we will know what's going on. Or we are upstairs hearing the argument and not seeing it. So I suppose it's looking at ways of making your film more and more visual, less explanation, less exposition, more visual. If how can I, it is a cinematic visual form. How do I cinematically realize the inner world, the workings of the inner mind? What does memory look like? What does grief look like? And what are the cliches around that? And what can I introduce that's new or fresh? Introduce your main character in a memorable way. I won't go into that much, but again, if you Google great character introductions, you'll see a lot of really interesting ways that filmmakers have done that. Don't write anything we can't see or hear. Writing that a character is sad uh, is not filmic, but showing them curled up in the fetal position and or whatever, you can find ways of expressing sadness better than that example. Do not write camera directions or transitions in your script. Every year we still get this. Even if you are directing, you're planning to direct, camera directions and transitions have no place in the script that you're putting in for this award, and it's more professional to not have them in there. So you don't need cut to. Obviously, every scene cuts to the next, and you definitely don't need the camera pans or zooms. You don't need that. That's up to the director to decide, and you could change your mind 100 times what the camera direction, and it just takes us out of the story. Don't describe a character's traits, show us. If the character shows in action, if they're mean or untrustworthy, again, I always give the example, but you'll come up with something better. If you very early on want to show your character is kind, they will put money in somebody who's begging on the street. And if they're mean, you could show them taking money from the cup. Don't write what is going on inside a character's mind. Show us what is going on inside a character's mind. Don't write description of how an actor is to deliver a line. Trust your cast really well, and trust them. They will help you. You will work on that with them, and they will interpret how to do that. Brevity and clarity. Keep it short and clear. Keep your sentences short and clear. This isn't a poetry competition, even though, of course, beautiful writing is welcome. But scripts, I feel, are like skeletons, and you put the flesh around them later when you make the film. But yeah, just keep it short and clear. They're the nicest scripts to read. Be aware of the gender balance and diversity of your film. So I think when we talk about EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, we're looking now for this to be not to be an afterthought. So looking at, how does your script reflect the world? How does it reflect the Ireland of today? It could be set in outer space, but looking around you, are you seeing in your script the same level of diversity and gender balance that you see in the world? What would happen if you flip things around? So, we get a lot of maybe gangster or gun, type films, and generally they're men at the male characters. So it's like looking, well, if I flip these around, or if that bank robber was, a 90-year-old woman, what would that look like, and would it help? They're very base suggestions, but what I mean is you find what's natural, and but we have to be representing the diversity that we see in the world, or make a point about that. So try and bring that in at the script stage. Christina, thank you. Can you identify, so if you've already written your script and you're just at that stage where is it ready to put in, is it ready to enter, or you've entered it before and you weren't successful in other places which are highly competitive, or with us, can you identify in your script the themes, the emotional heart? Can you talk easily and simply about that? Is your script boring? I mean, that's impossible for us to judge. But maybe get a trusted friend, somebody who likes film, watches films, and ask them to read it for you. Can you describe your script story in one clear sentence? I used to really rally against this in film school, but actually, if you can't, your story is usually in trouble. And that's been proven over and over. Is it cliched? Is it derivative? Does it have tropes in it that you see in many, many films? Well, look at ways of changing that. And I say that like it's easy. It is not easy to be original and creative, but find ways. Really, writing is torturous, and so rewarding, but you've really got to dig down into that and pull anything out that is cliched. What is new, urgent, or important about it? Why now? Why tell this story now? Why do you care? Why would we care? What does it say to the world? Is it visual? Is your script visual? I mean, it's very, very hard to get a script funded where two people are just in a room talking. And of course, we know that, loads of filmmakers have long scenes like Steve McQueen or Noah Baumbach or Greta Gerwig where people are talking, but that's in a larger feature film where they brought us on a journey. One short film with two people set in a room, unless it's extraordinarily brilliant in other ways, it would be very hard to get it funded. So is your film visual, and are you expressing that in the script? How have you included sound to help tell your story? I mean, it's no harm to bring in sound into the script. In fact, it's so welcome because it shows your creativity. Are there sounds, alarms, memories, dreams, birds, whatever it is that naturally fits with your story? Don't be afraid to include that. As much as cinema is a visual form, it is also an oral form. Have you edited your dialogue down to the barest words? I mean, I know many will cite Tarantino as a hero, or, a lot of the great screwball comedies of the 30s in America were all dialogue based. But, that's really, really hard to do. So, in terms of keeping it simple, looking at your chunks of dialogue and seeing, am I repeating what's been said? Am I saying it twice in different ways? What can I cut back to make this? It makes your script much more beautiful to read. Um, what is original, fresh, and exciting about it? These are questions to ask yourself. Can you answer these genuinely? Does it make us laugh, cry, or think? Generally, if you can do one of those three or any combination of those, you're onto a real winner. Does it have heart, truth, and integrity? And again, it could be, a zombie movie set on a space station. If you can convince us that you can do the production design for that, it can still have heart and truth and integrity in any genre. Uh, Great. Yeah. So this is a film that I made. It was funded by Screen Ireland. Um, it was on the Junior Cert cycle for a while. But I suppose it's a bit embarrassing to see it there now. I don't know why, but you can go online. It's available to see in many places online if you Google the White Dress short film Ireland. But again, a simple one clear idea. It's about a girl who makes her Holy Communion on her own, and there's no dialogue. It's based on a true story. Um, the themes were about the poverty that I was seeing around me, even though we were at the time they were claiming that we were the richest country in Europe, set in the noughties. Yeah, there's no dialogue, so it's all show don't tell. So we see a hint of parents, we see the poverty, and actually, this film, and there's many others online, in 3 minutes you can tell an epic story. So you have much longer than that with this scheme, but it's using it wisely and being visual and cinematic. And I think that's the great thing about cinema is that I find it easier to write without dialogue because I can visualize what I find hard to articulate. Thank you, Christina. Okay, finally, and I've no idea if I've gone over time or under it, but I'm sure Christina would tell me if I had. Another lovely short, another lovely still image there from Conveyance, writer director Gemma Cray. Um, So be brave with your subject matter. Like we welcome bold and brave storytelling. Like we've had some incredible themes, Kira and Christine will tell you over the last few years, like, based on really tough subject matters, but beautiful and sometimes humorous treatments of those huge themes. So be as brave as you want. We don't censor. We do like the films to be available to a general audience, Kira would maybe say. So because it is DLR County Council, they're funding it. So that's part of their remit. So just bear that in mind. But be brave. Give comedy a go. Please, please give comedy a go. We need more comedy writers. Yeah, we look forward to reading your comedy stories. Pick an idea and imagine you're telling the story to your friends. So this is again that going back to that workshopping thing. If you don't have a huge social capital in the film industry, or if you don't have peers who are writers or filmmakers, even just talk through the story with your friends. Can you talk it through easily? Does it make sense? Do you hit a point where you can't progress? Even delivering the story orally to them, just say it out or read it out and see how it sits, and by doing that you will start to edit the script, I guarantee you, for the better. Another way you can do it if you haven't written it yet is map the idea out, action on a page, points 1 to 10. It's called a script outline, and so you just map out one, you know character, whatever the name is. Mary walks into the bar. She notices a guy looking at her, whatever. And then, so, that's point one, point two, point three. And that's a great way to see, do you have a story in 10? If you can map that out in kind of 10 points, then you could probably start writing it. Get it all out on paper and then rewrite. It's another way. Just kind of, they call it the vomit draft. So it's like you almost just vomit the story out onto paper. Don't worry about formatting or anything at that stage. Just get it out and then start looking at structure and story and all the things. Yeah, ask for someone to read it whenever you're ready. Don't tell them anything in advance, and get feedback. And have fun with it all. It is, writing is torturous, but it's also kind of like it's the glorious torture. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing to do with your time. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I know there's some more questions in the chat, and Kira has been doing a tremendous job there answering some of them. I'm sure Vanessa will have a look as well.
I'll go through those now, Christina.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
But we'll welcome our special guest, Hannah, to speak to you now about her experience with the scheme. Thank you. Hannah, you're muted. Yeah. You're still muted there, Hannah. If everyone could just bear with us for a few minutes there. Hannah's microphone was working, so we'll just try to figure out.
Yeah, I'll just come in on a few questions there, and Hannah, you interrupt me when you're ready. I was just, Kira has answered this, I think, but just that question on identifiable locations. Do you have to have an iconic one? Like, you don't have to have an iconic one, but it is a Dún Laoghaire Rathdown award. They are financing it. So yes, you should embrace the locations. You should definitely have as many or at least one or two. Like, we understand that some films need to be set indoors and in houses and in shops and in different places, but you do have your establishing shots, you do have opportunities to bring your character outdoors. So yes, please embrace Dún Laoghaire Rathdown. It is a beautiful county and should be celebrated. And I recommend anyone to look up a map of the county. It will inspire you. It really will. I actually learned a lot about the county that I live in through this scheme, through Kira and the Arts Office. So I would highly recommend that. Hannah, whenever you're ready, or you can fix your microphone, you pop in. Let me see. I
There's
keep
a few
going.
there, Vanessa, that might be good ones
I
to
think
take
I'm
around the
okay.
team makeup.
Say that again.
Can you
Sorry.
hear me?
Oh, there's Hannah.
There's, is that Hannah?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear
I can
me?
hear you now. Yes.
Right, perfect. Sorry, I had the spinning wheel of death there where my whole computer had frozen and I couldn't click on anything. Hello, sorry.
No worries. It's great to
always-
hear you.
It's always the exact moment when you go to do something that it just goes, no, it's not happening right now. Sorry, hello everyone. My name is Hannah. I did First Frames last year. So Between was chosen as one of the projects. We filmed it last May, and it's currently starting its festival journey, which is very exciting. I can spiel a little bit about stuff here, but if anyone has any questions, please do, shoot them in and let me know. But I suppose, well, first of all, it's an amazing scheme, and I'd really encourage anybody to apply. I think, we all know, whether you're starting out as a filmmaker or you've been doing it for a little while, sometimes the hardest thing is feeling like you get stuck in like a development hell, you know what I mean, where you are writing loads of stuff, or you really want to get stuff made, but you kind of get stuck not actually being able to make anything. And I always find that the worst bit, where you're like, oh, I just want to make a thing, and a scheme like this actually lets you make a thing, and actually lets you try stuff out and explore and figure out what your voice is, as a filmmaker. And all of that is amazing and kind of invaluable. So I would really encourage everybody to give it a go and put something in. I think I was trying to think about, what might be most helpful. And when I got the scheme this time, I had applied, I think, a couple of other times. And I was like, what was different about getting it this time? And I think one of the big things was that I wrote something specifically for this scheme this time that I got it. So, I think the couple of times that I'd maybe done it before, it was a case of like opening the drawer and seeing what was in there. You know what I mean? It was like, okay, what scripts do I have? What can I lash into this scheme? And then this time I was like, I would really like to get it. And I kind of looked up the parameters kind of more specifically. And I was like, okay, what can I write that will fit this budget, that will use these locations, and then having that specificity and knowing that and going into it with that energy, I think really helped, because then you're just not trying to like crowbar something in, you know what I mean? You're writing something for the actual parameters of the thing, and that's important. Particularly, I think the location side of it, because that can really work in your favor. Because I don't know, sometimes I find if there are a few more parameters around doing something, it actually allows you to be weirdly more creative, rather than being like, it could be anything. It's like, no, it can be something quite specific, and then you just have more scope to actually really play within that. So I think that was really helpful. Another thing that I think I really started doing this time round was a pitch deck. This might sound all really basic to everybody, and you're probably like, yeah, we do that all the time. But I found like, and I can't remember, maybe Vanessa, I think in terms of submitting a pitch deck, that was kind of maybe more at the shortlisting phase, was it, rather than?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's more if the first phase is purely on script alone.
yeah.
But the second phase, pitch deck, great point to make actually, Hannah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's even, even if it's something that you're not going to submit with your script and it's going to be something that comes further down the line, it's kind of for your own brain a little bit and figuring out your references and figuring out what you want to do visually. Also, kind of figuring out, your themes and what you want to say, being able to distill all of that into a document, that really helped me. And starting to lay it out and starting to see how it all fit together a little bit. So that was something that really worked, I think. And then in terms of just choosing your team, I guess, and particularly choosing your producers, because they're who you're going to go in with at this point. You want to have them behind you. And that's a really important part because you are going to be a team. And particularly for, a scheme where, it's a really nice budget, but you also still have to be, careful about how you spend that they are your backup. They're going to be your backbone for the whole thing. You're both going to support each other through this process, have loads of chats, have loads of meetings, have loads of ideas together. And you should be open to that too. So it's that relationship is really important, and just be really clear about who you pick for that, and what you want that relationship to be, and that is a solid relationship, and they're going to have your back, and vice versa, you're going to have their back. I had amazing producers on this short, Ashling Malone and Lorraine Higgins for Ride Films. So, it made the process really fun. And it was great. And what's the point of doing this stuff if it's also not fun? Do you know what I mean? There's no point in beating yourself around the head and it being really stressful and you being like, oh my God, what, it should be fun too, I think. Because you're all kind of figuring that stuff out together, particularly at this stage, making shorts is a way to figure out what you're doing and where you want to go and have those building blocks in terms of if this is something that you want to do, and if you want to start thinking about writing features or start thinking about trying to climb up that ladder. This is an amazing place to start with that. Anyway, if anybody has any questions.
Yes, thanks, Hannah, for that. I just I'm looking through the chat here, and I see there's one specifically addressed to you about if you could talk about setting up the company. Somebody looking for guidance in that regard, because you need a company. The production needs to be attached to a company to administer the award.
Yeah, I guess that's more on the producer's side of things. I mean, I'm a dunce in that regard in terms of any of that kind of stuff, to be honest. But I suppose I think your producers have to be a company, and that has to be registered. That's right, Kira, isn't it? But they have to.
Yeah. So you were obviously working with Rye Films, and we've had basically what we have had in the past, because there's quite a lot of questions around this. So come in at any time. We have had, for example, where a film will attach itself to an established production company for the purposes of this, or the producer will be attached. So as an example, there's been a few films that have worked with Samsung Films, but the film is attached really for the purposes of producing it, rather than permanently, if that makes sense. Vanessa, is there anything else on production companies you want to come in?
No, I think there's a couple of different ways that it can be done, in that I see questions there. Like if you're an emerging producer and you don't have a company, you can, if you're shortlisted, you have a very tight turnaround, but you can find a company at that stage. However, it's not advisable. It's advisable to attach yourself to a company, or some emerging filmmakers form their own company. And and also, if you are new to producing, the film school does offer some mentorship in that regard. Like if you're new to applying for location permissions or new to insurance or things like that, we can help with that. So there's a couple of different ways. Some people work with experienced companies and experienced producers, which is very welcome. And then others who are where the producers also emerging, they may have their own company or form their own. Is that, sorry, I was answering questions. Is that on the right track? Is that the
Yeah,
right
I think
question?
it's just to stress that you won't have time to incorporate a company from when
Not
you
in the
apply for
2
the
weeks,
scheme.
no.
Yeah, so that's a kind of a long process. So you really do need to be looking at ways where you either, if you are emerging, you attach yourself to an existing one, or as Vanessa says, you work with producers who already have a company. So it's just that's crucial because the contract has to be with a registered company. And it will be part of the checking for the second stage. So just I would say to people, really do read the brief and the FAQs because and look at the criteria. That sounds really basic, but that's how your application is going to be assessed. And we're very clear about the criteria and we're very clear about the marks that apply for each stage. So do have a look at that before you apply.
I see another question there. I think that might have been for Hannah when she was talking. It was around any advice on developing characters and getting that across in the application. Do you have any tips and tricks there?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff you can do, I think, in that regard. Like you can do stuff that kind of has nothing to do with the script, but can make its way in there. So you can write little monologues or you can write little spiels. You could be like, if you take your character and you go, put them in a situation or put them in a scenario or, what did they do on this specific Tuesday or how did they react to this certain thing? And you can give yourself those exercises sometimes in terms of just writing like a little paragraph on, what they might do, in any given situation. And certain things can spark from that. And it might be stuff that never makes its way into the script, or it might be something that actually you go, oh, I actually quite like that detail. And I maybe want to add it in there because all of that stuff, I think, any extra stuff that you are ever writing about your characters or want to write to develop them is only ever going to make them more rich and make them feel more real and more alive, because if, you think about like, oh, what did this character do on their 9th birthday or, all of that stuff. It builds a bigger picture in terms of who they are. And even if it feels like it's inconsequential, it does start to leak into your writing and into your head about who they are. You know what I mean? Like you could even do an example of like wherever your script starts, you could do it as an exercise where you're like, okay, but what happens just before the script starts? Or what are they doing just before this scene? And sometimes that just gives you a bigger picture to pull from, Also, I want to second Vanessa's more comedies. Yay, more comedies for sure. And also you can, I think, like you can be ambitious in terms of, what you want the genre to be. Mine was a comedy sci-fi, and like there weren't any flying cars knocking around. It was more a cry-fi. Have you heard of that term, cry-fi? sad sci-fi. So more like sci-fi as a way into like their emotional world. But you can be ambitious with that stuff. You just have to also be like, can I make this, with this budget? But go wild and make it funny.
And there was just more of a comment about a team, which Vanessa has responded to. You do need a team, even if you have a script. But maybe, Hannah, you have some insights on how one might go about finding a team if they don't already have one in place.
Yeah, that's the process, I guess. And again, if you have your producers on board, these are all conversations that you're going to figure out together. And when it comes to when you're actually starting to really think if you are successful and you do get the funding and you get to make this, I mean, I will say pre-production is your real godsend. Like, make sure you give yourself lots of time, plenty of time. You know, it can't be a last minute thing. Everything, you know, production is the easiest that it will flow if you have done, you know, a whole chunk of work in pre-production. Why pre-production is my least favorite part of the whole process. Production is great, and you get to have the crack, and you kind of know what you're doing at that stage. And I love editing and piecing it all together. Pre-production is where you really do the work, and where you really kind of get all your just get everything aligned. And that's where, you know, if you start early enough, you can start thinking about who you would like to shoot it, or, you know, I think you need to have some cursory awareness of who else is working in the industry to a degree, and be watching stuff and be looking out for stuff and going, oh, I really liked how that was shot, you know, and maybe see who shot it and reach out to them. And, you know, I think there's no harm in reaching out to like your dream team too and see what they say, because people want to be working and people want to be making stuff. And if they like the project, then they'll want to work on it, even if, you know, obviously we'd all love to be paid loads and loads of money, but you know, also people want to work on stuff that they like. So yeah, do your research, see who you'd like to work with, reach out to them. I think another thing I'll say, and this is not to discourage anyone, but I think it's something that I wish I knew about any of this stuff, and it's that stuff is going to go wrong. It always does on any level of production, you know, on the smallest shorts to the highest big budget stuff is always going to go wrong. And as long as you know that and you can handle it, and know that, like, it's not the end of the world, we'll figure it out. If you have your support system, if you have a good team, and go, yeah, we'll make it work, then you'll be fine. And most of the work is like knowing that things are going to go wrong, you know, knowing that you'll figure them out, and then at the same time keeping the creative side alive at the same time, and keeping that strand with you always, because you are making something that is creative and imaginative, and you're telling a story, and that needs to be, you know, at your core always.
I think we're making our way there through the questions. I see Vanessa has responded to another one there. There was a question about page lengths. So in the brief, it does say a maximum of 12 pages, and somebody was querying about 15. So I don't know if Vanessa or Kira, you want to say any more about that, but I mean, it's really trying to, part of that process is trying to keep within the limits.
I mean, the reason we have a page limit is it's a few different reasons. It's budgetary, but it's also it's kind of become the norm for you know, festival programming, that kind of duration. However, I will say to you, that's 12 pages in correct screenwriting formatting. So like, readers can spot a million miles away if it's not correctly formatted. So scripts only work with the guesstimate of 1 minute per page if they're correctly formatted. If they're not, so like if you're trying to crush a 15-page script into 12, we'll see it straight away, because we're reading scripts for, well, in my case, nearly 30 years. So you can spot it a mile away. So really do look at the person who put the note in about 15 pages down to 12. I know it's horrible being asked to do that, but really, really look at it. See if there's any extra flesh on that script that can be taken out. And often when you do, you make it better. But then again, it's your story, so you know how best to tell it. Thanks.
Thanks, Vanessa. There was another one there that Vanessa responded to about entering more than one script. Again, nothing precludes you from doing so, but just to be thinking about, you know, the commitment and work that goes into the application if you're considering submitting more than one. There's also another question in there. I'm not sure if Vanessa or Kira want to talk about the magical realism genre. I believe we don't preclude that, but it might be a bit hard to know exactly what is meant by that comment. If your application is ticking all the other boxes of requirements, I believe it would be possible to submit. But maybe Kira and Vanessa want to say something else there.
Well, I mean, we've had elements of magical realism in screenwriting before. Again, you know, at the shortlisting stage, the long listing stage, I suppose, readers are looking for good storytelling, something that stands out. A lot of the things I was talking about in my slides, some of the things Hannah has been talking about. Is it fresh? Is it new? Is it good? Is it well written? If there are elements of magic realism, wonderful. But we also are looking at the scheme, the feasibility. So I don't know what elements, and how they're to be realized when we're reading a script. If somebody is to morph into a changeling or another being or whatever, it's like, how is that going to be done? And what you don't want to do is have yourself precluded at a very early stage. If it, and you will have to convince a panel that you can do that within the budget. Somebody else was asking about animation, and Kira responded rightly that, we don't, it is a live action. However, Kira, you could correct me if I'm wrong, somebody could have an element of something animated, which can be like a special effect or, something that they're relying on in that regard. It's case by case in that scenario. But what we wouldn't be doing is funding something that would be 40 or 50% animation, because that's another award scheme. It is a drama live action award. Kira, would you say that that's correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So if it's a very small part, yeah, that's totally fine.
Yeah, and we see it more and more. So many people have software at home that can create their own animations. It used to be a huge pipeline, and it still is in the grander sense. So, like a little animated effect or a little character that appears, those kind of things are welcome, because we'll know at the reader stage that that's feasible. But a film that is 50% animation, A, we know that that's massively time consuming, and B, it can be hugely expensive. Now, you could argue you'll do the animation yourself, but do you even have the time, as well as make a film, as well as do all the other things? So we're looking for brilliant scripts, brilliant people, but feasibility is really, really important as well. Will you be able to make this film in these parameters, with this budget, in the timeline, and have a good time doing it, so that it's not a horrendous experience for you and you don't run out of time and you run out of money? That means that your film is suitable for another scheme, not this one, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And the other thing we need to remember is, I suppose we'd often say, come back to who's funding this. So it's Dún Laoghaire Rathdown County Council, and one of the big things is around locations. So that's part of the reason. You need to think about the locations. It's worth 25% of the first stage. So we just encourage people to think about that. And we don't give feedback retrospectively. So if you applied a couple of years ago, no, we certainly couldn't be giving feedback from a few years ago. There's another question, Vanessa. Maybe you could take this one. It's come in a few times. Can we apply as co-writers and co-directors? A team of 2 writers and directors. We don't have live action experience yet, but have had one of our scripts workshopped and came out as a finished film. With this context, would it be okay to apply?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Co-writers are more than welcome. Co-directors, I mean, I have co-directed myself, but it would be something, if you were shortlisted, you would have, again, you'd be trying to convince us how that would work. How does co-directing work? Does one director take care of one element or the other? How well have you done this before? Those kind of things. Have you worked creatively before? So, you have a little tiny job of work there to do to convince us that that would work. We are only going to back films that we feel really strongly about the team and the story, and that they're going to make it. And so co-writing, absolutely no problem whatsoever. In fact, I think co-writing is a lovely thing, because you've got that person. You don't have to go and find them. You can bounce back and forth and bring other elements too, and check, is this funny? Is this cliched? Is this boring? But co-directing live action can be tricky. But obviously there are pairs doing it out there in the world, the Coen brothers, the Dardenne brothers, there's lots of them. But they're brothers, and we know that, like with Joel and Ethan Coen, they take care of completely different roles, or so they say. One will be at the camera and one will be with actors. So it's convincing us that that's something you can pull off without, two people in disagreement, which would be a nightmare for everyone concerned. There's another question there from Valerie. I have a question about theme. I like what Hannah said about writing for the scheme. Is it okay to approach a tricky theme and be funny? My genre is dark humor. Absolutely, 100%. Go for it, Valerie. And also, I saw somebody who's like, we're all making comedies now. Look, it's not like we're looking for only comedy. It's that comedy is hard, and Hannah will nod in agreement. It's hard to be funny. Like we will often say, culturally, it is said that people who live on the island of Ireland are inherently funny. I think that can be true. We're oral storytellers, but it doesn't always translate into our comedy in television and film. It does sometimes. We have wonderful people, talented people like Hannah, but it it's because it's really hard to be funny. It's easier to be funny with your friends who have a long track record in knowing the in jokes and the nuance of you. But when we come to write it, it's hard. And also just, we are open to all themes, dark, edgy, funny, serious, social realism, magical realism. We're open to it all. It really comes down to the story, and how good it is. And so not everybody has to go and write comedy, but we're just saying that we don't see enough applications, I think, enough good ones. So we just encourage it in that regard. I mean, don't go writing anything that isn't you. If you've never written comedy before and you've never even thought about it till you came to this session and thought, oh, I better write a comedy, then maybe not. If you are a social realist writer, if Ken Loach is your hero and that's who you aspire to, or Chloe Zhao, or whoever it is, then that's the style that draws you in. That's the genre that draws you in. Then that's most likely be the one that you'll be better at. But we're just saying that if you have funny bones and you're a writer, please submit.
We have had lots of successful ones that aren't comedy. So just not to terrify anybody who doesn't write, and that we're totally open.
Play to your strengths, definitely.
Yeah,
Hannah?
Exactly. Yeah.
Just want to flag that we're coming up on the hour now, so just conscious of everyone's time. But there's a couple of questions there. There was a couple of questions about reapplying again. It's in the brief. You can reapply. There's nothing to preclude you, even if you were previously shortlisted. You just need to go through the brief and see things might have changed since that time. So that's a yes. There was a question there maybe for Emma about the cost to securing permits for filming on locations in DLR. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah. So if you're successful under this scheme, there's no cost for your permits, but outside of this scheme, there would be costs for filming permits. But under the First Frames, if you're successful, there will be no cost for your location fees.
And then maybe one of the final questions then again is about, again, this comes up, it's about how can I network to meet people and form a team or join a production company? Do we help with networking? I'll let Vanessa speak to that.
We were talking about this earlier. We can definitely point you in a few directions, but straight away, sign up for every newsletter going. Screen Ireland, Screen Skills Ireland. There's Crew West, if you live in West of Ireland. If you live in Dublin, there's Filmmakers Ireland. Get onto the social media networks and join every single one of those. Women in Film and Television is an incredible resource. Even if you're not a woman, follow them on LinkedIn, Facebook. They announce everything going, networking sessions. And I was a former vice chair of Women in Film and Television, and we welcome men to join us all the time. So, there are loads of online networks out there that meet up. And is exactly for the purpose you're talking about, building social capital in the industry. You've got to get out there and start going to those screenings, get-togethers, meetups, and you'll find everyone you're looking for, from producers to writers, cinematographers, sound, and all craftspeople, editors. Everyone will be there, and you and also going to festivals like I'm just back from the Catalyst International Film Festival, which is a equality and diversity film festival in Limerick, which I'm involved with. But like that's a whole tribe of people that have come out of that festival. It's only about 6 years old. So there's others. There's film festivals and screenings going on every day of the week in Dublin, if you're in Dublin, and there are others outside the country all the time. Go to them, meet your tribe, find people. But we can point you in some directions as well.
Okay, thank you. And I see some people have offered some pointers there in the chat as well. I think we've covered everything. We are at time now, so we could probably go on all day, but I just have up on the screen there the contact email address for the scheme. So that's dlrfirstframes@iadt.ie. So if you want to ask further questions about applying to the scheme or anything, you can pop me an email there at that email address. But I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us this morning on this really nice sunny day. And thank you to our guest presenters. Thank you to Ciara, to Emma, to Vanessa and Hannah. We love doing this scheme, and we are so delighted that DLR has continued to work with us in IADT supporting this scheme, and with the funding it's very important, and we're very passionate about it. So we're delighted that you joined us today and that you're interested in participating in the scheme, and we so look forward to receiving your applications. So best of luck to everyone who goes on to apply, and thank you all.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Bye now.
Thanks, bye.